Server-side header bidding will become one of the hottest topics this year for publishers. In this video, you will learn everything about client-side header bidding, server-side header bidding, the key differences, why it's so strategic this year, and hopefully help you better decide on your strategy this year. Now, before talking about header bidding, let's actually take a step back and talk about what's a client and what's a server. Let's say that you browse the web and you want to go on Hubvisor.io, which is a pretty good idea. In this case, your browser and your user's device is the client. And this client is sending a call to the Hubvisor.io server. In response, we'll reply with all the amazing content that you can see on our website. So, put simply, internet is a client asking information to a server, and then the server replying with information or content. All right, how about header bidding? Well, historically, publishers have implemented header bidding solutions on the client side, which means that they integrated prebid.js within their own website. As a result, whenever a user is using the website, their own user's device is sending the calls to each SSP when asking for advertising demand. And in response, you understood, every SSP is replying with their own bids. And that's a great technique for several reasons. The first one is that it's a direct relationship that your website has with all the SSPs and bidders servers, which means potentially a faster request and answer process overall. The second good aspect of it is the transparency. Because prebid.js is directly integrated on your own website, you can actually see and monitor everything that is being processed by the machine. And there's another one that's linked to that, it's the control. Again, because it's fully transparent within your website, you can control any aspect of the prebid configuration. Now, of course, there are some drawbacks by going full client side. The first of those is the latency. By making your website, by making the user's device do all the calls to every SSP, it puts all the machine load within this device and this website. The result is that if you plug, for example, 20 or 30 different SSPs, this can impact the web performance of your website, and you don't want your website to be too slow. The second aspect that is not so dangerous actually is potential security issues. Because the wrapper is directly inside your website, if there's any major problem or major flaw with your header bidding solution, it can potentially impact your whole website. And again, this occurs really rarely. Now, what's a full server-side header bidding solution? Well, as the name states, the idea is to take prebid.js and deport it on a server. Let me show you. Here's your client, so your publisher's website. You install a minimum line of code within your website that will just do one thing, which is calling an external servers that will load the prebid library for you. In this case, that's an external computer, the server or the cloud, that will do all the calls to all the different SSPs and then get the different answers from all the SSPs and bring the best or all answers to your client or to your ad server. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this? You understood the big advantage is that potentially it can make your website way faster. If you have 10 SSPs in place, instead of having 10 calls to load, your website just has one call to load, the one to the prebid server. The second one, again, it's not so big, is security. Whenever prebid server fails or bugs, then there is zero impact on your website because it is not directly integrated within your website. But the biggest advantage of prebid server is that it doesn't only work on the web. It also works across apps, CTV, and basically anything connected to the internet. So you have way more inventory that you can connect throughout Prebid server. Now, drawbacks. Because Prebid is loaded within an external computer, it's potentially less transparent. Now, there's a lot of solutions that bring full transparency over Prebid server, but you get to know that the machine is not being loaded by your website, so you don't have the same level. Same thing for control. If the Prebid library is loaded on an external server, you might not have the same level of control rather than having it on your website directly. But the biggest flaw of Prebid server is cookie syncing. And this requires more explanation. Let me get back to the previous slide. All right, as of today, most SSPs and DSPs need cookie syncing calls so that they can work. And in order to get this information, they need requests directly from the client. You understand, whenever you add a server in between your website and the SSPs, you will need to add as much cookie syncing calls as they are SSPs integrated. The key message here is that if you plug 20 SSPs on the server-side integration, you will need 20 different separate cookie syncing calls that goes from your client to every SSP. And that's a problem for two reasons. The first one is that obviously it adds up some load on your website. When going server-side, you might think that everything is done within the server infrastructure, but it's not necessarily the case. You add up cookie syncing calls on your website, hence making it potentially slower, and oftentimes even slower than a client-side integration with 10 SSPs. The second problem, and it's a big one, is discrepancies. Every time you add cookie syncing calls, you are losing a big part of the audience recognition capability from the DSPs and the SSPs. We think that there's about 40% of the audience that is unmatched within a cookie syncing call. All right, in easy, simple terms, server-side is not perfect, you lose some part of the audience, and you need to add up cookie syncing calls. But now, and here's why everything changes this year, is because third-party cookies will disappear. They will get depreciated by Google Chrome. And in this case, you don't need any cookie syncing calls anymore, nowhere, it's over. And in this case, the major drawback of server-side is done. And that's why more and more publishers this year will try out those server-side solutions because they will become progressively as efficient as client-side. Now you heard me, I said progressively, because most of the bidders, SSPs, DSPs today, they work way better on client-side. They are still relying on third-party cookies. And oftentimes when today you put an SSP on server-side, doesn't work as well as client-side. So what you need for this year is to prepare for the future, but going slowly and regularly towards it. Here's our solution. The idea is to have a hybrid system. You can have both client-side and server-side together in place, and they work complementary. Let me show you. You integrate a client-side Prebid.js within your website. This client-side solution will call the biggest partners that you have and that perform better on client side. These guys, you don't want to move them on server side. But then everybody else, including maybe the smaller SSPs or the ones that are actually performing better on server side, then we will call them through a server side solution. That's the best of both worlds. You avoid some weight on your website, you try out server side capabilities of every partner that you have, and you still have the most performing ones throughout your client-side integrations. But the best part is that it's actually an adaptive system. Let me explain. Every SSP will not perform the same depending on the formats, on the countries, on the environments, and so on and so forth. So if you have an SSP mix on display web inventory, that's with SSP 1, 2, 3 in client side and the other on server side. Maybe when you go on outstream inventory, it will be SSP 4, 5, 6 that are better on client side. And in this case, you can dynamically change the mix of SSPs that goes into the client and the mix of SSPs that are going through the server. By doing so, you will learn a lot with your existing partners about how they can adapt to server-side and prepare the future of cloud header bidding. I was so happy to talk to you about this. I hope it was useful. I invite you to visit our website to know more, and I'll see you soon in another video.